If you're looking to buy a stacked NBA 2K account with max badges and more, visit sportstmb.com. He has been in the community for years and has hundreds of reviews. Click the first link in the description to get your account today.
Real quick, if you enjoy this video, there are many more like it to come, and there are already many more like it on this channel, so please subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this video. Also, of course, drop a like. I have to feed my family somehow. Also, as you can tell, I am sick. So you have to drop a sympathy like for me powering through this. And also, as it turns out, me and my podcast co-host Mojo99 decided to make the same video, or basically on the same topic. So yeah, these videos are different because I went in a different direction than he did, but just a heads up. That was not planned in any way, just a pure coincidence. Great minds think alike, I guess. Anyways, as of recently, Joel Embiid has been missing some time for the Philadelphia 76ers. In the 7 games that he's been out, they have gone 5-2. And more importantly, in those 7 games, the other cornerstone of the Sixers, Ben Simmons, has averaged 21 points, 9 rebounds, 8 assists, and 2 steals on 63% shooting, which is obviously a huge step up from the 15, 7, and 8 on 55% shooting that he was averaging previous. And with this streak and the albeit brief emergence of Ben Simmons, there has been the idea of trading Joel Embiid being thrown around. Now, this is obviously a very dicey situation, and because of that, I don't really have a strong opinion on this, but there is definitely a legitimate reason to think that Embiid should be traded. So I wanted to go over the pros and cons of trading Joel Embiid. Let's get into it. So I think the main thing that needs to be considered here, and definitely considered first, is the ceiling of a team built around Ben Simmons versus a team built around Joel Embiid, both being in their primes. The problem here is we have yet to see a team built properly around these two as a duo, and even more importantly, we obviously haven't seen them built around separately, so we can only speculate. We don't know tangibly what those ceilings are yet, so I can do my best and use some imagination, or rather some educated guessing. Let's start with Embiid. An ideally built team around Embiid consists of floor spacers, some defenders who can complement his defensive abilities, and a shot creator slash playmaker who can space the floor. Basically what Markelle Fultz was supposed to be would be perfect next to Joel Embiid. Now flip it over to Ben Simmons. With Embiid you obviously need floor spacing, but with Simmons I think you need it even more. A team of like Ben at point with shooters like Joe Harris, Robert Covington, Davis Bertans, and Brook Lopez, for example, that would be the perfect situation. Like, could you imagine Robert Covington on the Sixers? That would be crazy. And then also having a guy who can score like 20 points per game without getting in the way of Ben Simmons. That really is the main problem with this duo, is that Ben can't quite be what he is because Joel Embiid is a big-time scorer who does not mesh with Ben's game well. Basically, you need a guy like what Kristaps Porzingis was on the Knicks in his 3rd year, or even better, a Klay Thompson type of guy, and a secondary playmaker would also be really essential here. Getting Ben opportunities as a roll man, because I think used properly, Ben could be very dangerous as a pick and roll guy with his vision and explosiveness. He could do what Draymond Green does for the Warriors while being even more dangerous, being that he's more explosive going towards the basket. Now, if you're asking me, both of those models seem pretty damn good. They're also pretty similar models. Both need shooters, but also a playmaking, but also capable off-ball player to pair with them. I honestly can't say what team would be the best with those constructions, but maybe looking at their potential peaks individually would make that more clear. Though he is only 25 years old, I feel like Joel Embiid is pretty close to his peak. Losing some weight might make a difference, but at this rate, I'm not sure that that's ever going to happen. But where Embiid is right now, he is roughly the 7th to 12th best player in the league, depending on who you ask. I believe I put him around 8th in my top 10 list when I put that out a while ago. Now, people tend to say that you need a top 10 player to realistically win a championship, but in reality, you really need a top 5 player. With pretty much every championship team each year, that team has had a top 5 player, which is a really depressing reality, but it is reality. So Joel Embiid doesn't quite meet that top 5 player threshold, and I don't think he ever will. The problem with that is I don't think Ben Simmons has that kind of potential either. It's not like I'm setting him up to be a future top 5 guy, because I don't think he is. Ben Simmons at his peak is basically LeBron James light, but like pretty damn light, not just a little bit. So now I guess I'll argue against both players. Joel Embiid is incredibly injury prone. He obviously missed the first 2 years of his career, and he hasn't played over 65 games in a single season since. Now it is worth mentioning that he hasn't missed any significant chunks of time since his NBA debut. It's really just minor injuries that he gets throughout the year that have him miss 20 or so games, but that is still a problem. In pretty much every playoff game he's played, he's had one small injury or another, and that's always led to him being about 15% worse than he'd normally be, which is a big deal. Another huge drawback with Embiid that I don't think gets mentioned enough is just the simple fact that he is a center. A team hasn't won a championship with a center as their best player since I was 2 years old, unless you want to argue that Ben Wallace was the best player on the 04 Pistons. And by the way, fuck you guys, I'm 19 years old. I'm talking about Shaq. And as the game steps away from the post-up as it gradually has the past few years, Joel Embiid loses his biggest asset as a player, which is his low post scoring. Outside of posting up, he's an okay mid-range shooter, a bad three-point shooter, a good roll man, but take away the post-up, and Embiid is basically Rudy Gobert with a mid-range jump shot, and more injuries. So Embiid may very well be a relic of the past, and an injury-prone relic at that. But looking over at Ben Simmons, I don't know if you guys are aware, but Ben Simmons isn't particularly good at shooting jump shots. Like, he's actually pretty bad at it. Almost as bad at it as he is good at apologizing to Kylie Jenner for her cheating on him. But really, the thing that concerns me the most about Ben Simmons is not his jump shot. With the right team built around him, Ben really wouldn't need to shoot jumpers pretty much ever. Ben and 4 shooters mean he could drive and kick all day. My biggest concern with Ben Simmons is his lack of aggressiveness. Ben, at the size that he is, at the speed that he is, with his ball handling ability and athleticism, is someone who should be averaging 20 on any NBA team with pretty much any personnel. He is just someone who should be unstoppable going to the basket, and yet he isn't. His aggressiveness is the main drawback with Ben Simmons, in my opinion. But the biggest reason that you choose Embiid over Ben Simmons is Ben Simmons has not established himself yet. He hasn't proven to be a top 10 player in the NBA at any point in his career, despite what Colin Cowherd might say. Committing to Embiid means you're committing to a certifiable top 10 player. Committing to Ben Simmons means you're committing to the chance of Ben being a top 10 player one day. It might be one day sooner rather than later, but it's still one day, and there's a significant difference between those two options. Now, what's important to consider here, and I'm sure is something that Sixers fans have been saying in the comments already, is that it's not impossible to build around these two as a duo. I think 3 really good shooters, one of them being a good secondary playmaker and shot creator around Ben and Embiid, could be a really good championship level team. Basically, last year's Sixers with Jimmy Butler being a lethal 3-point shooter. But what I think makes you okay with trading one of them is that you're going to get a hell of a lot of stuff back for one of them. It's not like you're just choosing to throw one of them away. Now what you gotta consider is what player gets the biggest trade package, who is the most valuable asset, who's going to get the greatest return. Another thing to consider is one team that might be willing to trade for one of these players might not be willing to trade for the other because they're not exactly interchangeable. There are so many things to take into consideration with this particular subject that it's pretty much insane. And with the different potential peaks of these guys, the returns could be different. See, yes, Embiid is a top 12 player in the NBA at a minimum, but he is also injury prone, which brings down his trade value. So Embiid's value might be more like the 15th best player in the NBA rather than like the 8th, which is still a very good value, but it isn't anything extraordinary. With Ben, he's not an injury risk. He missed his first year obviously, but since then he hasn't missed more than 3 games in a season. And while Ben Simmons does not have the allure of being a top 10 player, he has the potential in him that boosts his value to get him pretty close to what Joel Embiid would return. But of course, there is also the concern of his lack of a jump shot. With how bad of a shooter Simmons is, there are very little teams that can accommodate that without completely retooling their roster and presuming that the Sixers get back a shooter for Ben Simmons that is one or more guys less around Simmons who fits with him. So that's a concern. In terms of some actual trade packages, I really only came up with 2. Both of them are actually involving the Golden State Warriors. One is D'Lo and probably a few other assets for Ben Simmons. The problem with that is the Warriors would have to trade Draymond Green because I can't really think of a worse fit than Draymond Green and Ben Simmons together. And then, and bear with me, I do think there is a world where the Warriors trade Klay Thompson for Joel Embiid. If Curry, Klay, and Green don't quite have the magic that they used to in a tougher Western Conference, there's a chance that they would want to move Klay for Embiid, which creates a very different dynamic from the Splash Bros, which certainly has the building blocks to be an even better duo, and with this move you don't necessarily have to trade Green, though it isn't a great fit. Those are really the only 2 scenarios that I can think of right now. I'm sure if I spent more time I could think of some more, but then the question becomes which of those 2 trades makes the better team. Presuming they're both available, would you rather have Ben and Klay or Embiid and D'Lo? If you ask me, I'm taking Ben and Klay because I personally believe in the potential of Ben Simmons and believe he'll be there one day in the right situation. And Klay Thompson would fit flawlessly next to him. But that is still a problem because you're still hoping for Ben Simmons' potential there. I might be wrong about him. I'm wrong about a lot of things apparently. Really, if I could just sum up my thoughts for this video, I just don't know. This is a really tough scenario. Now again, it's definitely worth mentioning that you don't 100% have to trade one of these 2 guys. There is a world where the 2 of them can work. However, I think with the right trade, you could build a team with a much higher potential than a team built around those 2. But it's a very delicate thing. All I know for sure is I would not want to be the one who has to make that call if it comes to it, and I wouldn't want to be a fan of the team that has the guy who decided giving a max contract to Tobias Harris was a good idea as the one making that call. So should the Sixers trade Joel Embiid? I have no fucking idea, man. That's the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and cue the outro music.